So, first of all, hello, I'm Grandmaster Priyadharshan, and everyone, thanks for logging into today's session. So, we initially planned it as actually a session more specific for our students in Singapore, but then we decided, okay, we'll open it for everyone. And because we are going to be mainly discussing some general tournament tips, if it's like, if it's your first tournament or if you've played a few tournaments, but how you could do better in your tournaments and so on. So before I go into details on that, I'll briefly introduce who I am and what I do. Some of you might know me, some of you might not. So I'm the founder of Gaja Academy, and so we have students out here from multiple countries right now at Gaja. And I personally, I have coached 5 national champions in different age categories, and have been the coach of the Brazil national team in 2022 Chess Olympiad, and also have coached the Indian sub-junior team in the sub-junior Olympiad in 2019. And I won 11 international medals in Asian, World, Commonwealth, and so on. So that's very brief introduction about myself. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and let me do that. Give me a second. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. I've just shared my screen. And mainly, there will also be a Q&A at the end of the session. So in case if you have any questions now, like you have some questions in mind that you want to clarify, please put it on chat to me. So at the end of the session, when we have Q&A, I'd be happy to answer them. So that will be that as well. So just want to mention that straight up ahead of time. So as I said, mainly we wanted to focus on the Singapore National School Tournament that starts in a week, but it's general tournament tips, so it will help everyone. Yeah. Okay. So that's just want to start off with that. And mainly this would help players, as I said, who have played maybe 1 or 2 tournaments or never have you played in a in-person tournament. I'm not counting online games. Like if you have an online played few games that I'm not really counting. So few those that's like just want to put that out. And although the session is recorded, just wanted to let everyone know. And we'll be posting it in case if you want to refer the session later on. It will be on Chess Gaja's YouTube channel, so you can check it out after the class as well. So yeah, so basically very briefly about Chess Gaja, we currently have about 120 plus students in 15 plus countries, and we have coaches of all rating levels, from entry level FIDE rated players all the way up to grandmasters. Not just me, but we have other 2 additional grandmasters taking classes, and a lot of our students on the top rankings in the US. So that's very briefly about what Chess Gaja is and what we do. And we are operating out of India, but we are a fully online academy. Just want to put that out. Yeah. So first thing first, so if you're playing in any tournament, sportsmanship is very important. You know, because you're all in beginner, intermediate level. I know some of you personally as well, like as in your chess level and so on. So important thing is to be very, be that sportsmanship, have that attitude very correct. Because in initial stages of any sport career, you will be losing a lot of games. More than winning, you will actually be losing a lot of games. So it is very important to take losing with equal grace, and accepting defeat. That is something I want to put it out, because right at the start we don't win every game we play. We will be facing opponents who are much more stronger than us, who would have played much more tournament games than us, trained harder than us, and so on. So we also have to be same humble when we win. That's, I think, the absolute basic of any sports if you take it. And in general, in chess, when you play against your opponent, at the start of the game, you have to shake your hands with the opponent. Like you have to shake hands with your opponent, irrespective of like at the start and also at the end of the game. So that is the correct spirit of the chess. Okay. So please do that. Even if you win or lose, you also have to shake hands at the end of the game. So some organizations might have slightly different rules, but you can but more or less all the tournaments will have this shake hands rule generally at the start of the game, every game that you play. Yeah. And if you lose a game, as I said, don't feel like, okay, I've lost, I'm a bad player, chess is not for me. Don't think like that. Because, even when I started my chess career, obviously in my first tournament, I won 2 games and I think I lost three. So I lost more than what I won. And now I'm a grandmaster in the top 500 in the world rankings. So losing is part of the learning process. Clearly remember that. And if you lose a game, analyze it. What did you do wrong? And learn from it. That is the key. Yeah. Don't feel like, okay, I lost, so I'm not a good chess player. I should not play. No, that kind of approach will never ever help us. So it's important to identify what went wrong and then fixing it because it will help us to win the future games. Yeah, that's the very, very basics of chess, I would say. Okay, so next thing, about this tournament specific, I wanted to mention because I know some of you are playing in this event. The time control, it seems, is 15 minutes and 10 seconds increment in the Singapore Nationals. So 15 minutes plus 10 seconds increment per game is a lot of time, in my opinion. It looks like it's very less, but it's actually a lot of time when you take into account the increment point. Even if it is a general tournament with any time control, the most important mistake I see a lot of young players make whenever I go to scholastic tournaments, when I discuss with young chess players, they tend to play very fast because they feel like either they will run out of time or they just want to keep playing moves without thinking. So the most important aspect from that is to take your time. So for the players who are attending the session today, think of it because if you play quickly also, after the game ends, you're just simply going to go outside the tournament hall and just simply be like sitting there, right? Better use the time in the game that is allocated to you carefully and spend it on the board. And another mistake a lot of players make, especially I've been to the Singapore Nationals 2 years ago, so I know how these tournaments run also personally. So what happens is when your opponent makes a move, right? You will feel like, okay, I need to play as fast as my opponent does. We'll try to play as instinctively as our opponent does. But why should we, right? We should not. We should take our time. If our opponent is in a hurry, that doesn't mean we should be in a hurry to reply. Many times, if we just slow down, like maybe let's say instead of making a move in 1 second, if we take like 20 seconds, 30 seconds to think through, there might be a clear winning move in the board. But just because we are not thinking and applying whatever we have studied so far, whatever our knowledge of chess, if we don't apply it, then we're obviously we're going to miss the key ideas in the game, right? So don't react instinctively. If your opponent plays a move, don't like try to play it as fast as your opponent. It's not a race who plays the fastest move on the board. Yeah. The thing is who tries to play the best game and win the game. Yeah. So that is the most mistake I see often. Like playing too fast. Like even if they give 15 minutes, the game will be over in 2 to 3 minutes. And then they'll come out of the game. Yeah. If you have 90 minutes, if you have much longer time control in other tournaments, that is a different thing. Again, you have to spend like proportionately higher time. But 15 minutes is plus 10 seconds increment is a rapid time control. So basically, I would expect everyone who's playing in this tournament should spend at least 12 to 13 minutes of their time every game in their clock. Yeah. So don't try to finish the game in like 2 to 3 minutes in your time. Try to spend 12 to 13 minutes of your time. It does not matter if your opponent plays super fast, takes his time. You spend your time. That is very, very critical because if you spend your time, you can avoid a lot of blunders, in my opinion. Okay. So just wanted to add that. And just want to clear, is my audio still very clear, right? So that because I just want to keep going, and if everyone is hearing me, that would be fantastic. Okay. And okay, next thing, as I said about how you play fast or slow, playing slow is better. And the next thing that I see often mistakes in young chess players and beginner intermediate player is many of you think that whoever makes the first blunder kind of loses. As in what I mean by that is, let's say very early in the game, you lose a pawn or you lose a bishop or a knight, some piece you did not look carefully on the board and you blunder. Your opponent manages to capture it. But then what happens is you think like, okay, it's game over. I'm already a piece down. I lost a pawn, so I'm going to lose. That is not the right approach, because in chess, more or less, always the person who blunders the last loses the game. What I mean by that is, even if you are, let's say, a rook down, you are a bishop down. But imagine in the end of the game, near end of the game, your opponent comes and blunders a queen, right? Then you have higher chance to win the game, right? So the person who blunders the last will often will be the one who is losing the game, not the person who blunders first. Yeah. And even if you lose some material very early in the game, don't give up hope. Yeah. Keep fighting, because the reason is, as I said, your opponent, if you can blunder, your opponent can also equally blunder. And trust me, in games in your level and all, will be filled with at least 8 to 9 blunders, critical blunders by both sides combined. So if you blunder one, that doesn't mean your opponent will play a perfect game and finish the game and that the opponent will win. That your opponent will give ample amount of chances for you to come back into the game. That is very, very important, I would say. Yeah. And another thing I would say is, even there's a possibility your opponent might stalemate you. Yeah. Uh, Even if you blunder a lot of material. And that is also another thing that I see often, because players just trying to checkmate very quickly, they actually end up going stalemating the opponent. So something to be carefully aware of. Yeah. So don't, especially if you have a winning position, take your time. Don't rush to win the game, because you don't get an extra point, or 2 extra points if you win faster. You get the same 1 point for scoring a win if you win slower or faster. Yeah, there's no extra points for scoring a win faster. So when you have an advantage, when you have a big advantage or even a small advantage, take your time. Don't rush to play and finish the game. See how you can checkmate your opponent properly, calculate it out, and try to win the game. Okay, very important, because a lot of one games, just because we play too fast or we don't see the board properly, we end up making a stalemate. Yeah, better to avoid that. Very important. Yeah. And one of the things very, very useful in all, even for a beginner or even in grandmaster level, that we say is forcing moves. This is very important. And it is what we call CCTP. As you can see, I put it on the text over here. What we call CCTP, some of you might have known from your previous classes that you have taken with coaches and so on. First C stands for checks. Second C stands for captures. The third, the T stands for threats, and P for pawn breaks. Of this, checks, captures, threat is very, very important. Pawn breaks is also there, but not as important as checks, capture, threat. So what are these? Why are these important? Because we call these the forcing moves of chess. They play a very decisive role. Generally, these are the things that are connected to blunders. So if your opponent blunders, most likely you will be able to exploit your opponent blunder by doing a check or a capture or a threat most of the time. So that is why this is it really has to every move you need to think, okay, is there a way I can give a check to my opponent? Is there a way I can capture something of my opponent? Is there a way I can create some threat? Same way you also have to think, is my opponent doing anything to me? Do I have to defend accordingly? Yeah. Like how you can generate a threat, your opponent can also equally generate a threat. So just wanted to, that's something. I also have some chess positions today to practice. After I show the PowerPoint, a few positions will also be there for solving. Okay. So it's not just a PowerPoint. Just want to mention that I have about 4 to 5 positions I've chosen, which will cover the checks, captures, threats, and also some checkmating ideas and so on. Yeah. So this is also very important. So whenever you're looking at the board and you're looking for a move, look at checks, captures, threats, every single move for yourself, and also see if your opponent is threatening something on you. And if they are threatening, you need to defend or respond accordingly to ensure your pieces are safe and that you don't blunder any of them. Yeah. And trust me, this is something that we tell in more or less in every class, we tell students and so on, but the students keep forgetting or they don't apply it on the board. So that is why it becomes such a crucial thing. Even in the strongest grandmaster level, this principle still holds absolutely true. Checks, captures, threats, pawn breaks. Not just for beginners, but even for the strongest chess players out there. So that's there. Yeah. And another thing, as I was mentioning, handling your advantage. If you get let's say a big advantage, your opponent blundered a queen or blundered a lot of piece. Now it's time to win, right? But many times what happens, as all young players, they generally want to capture everything in the opponent's board. They don't want to even leave one pawn of the opponent left. They think capturing everything will, like, make you very happy. But better is to see, once you have a certain amount of extra material, let's say you have a rook extra, let's say a rook and one pawn extra, or two minor pieces extra, something, something like that, then it is more than enough for you to then try to go and checkmate the opponent. So it does not matter that you have to capture every pawn, every piece of opponent before you go checkmate. Don't do that. Because many a times what happens, what I see in beginner level, intermediate level is you will have an extra queen or let's say extra rook and you will capture every pawn and then you'll accidentally make one move, you will end up stalemating the opponent. But if in case, if you, let's say if you have not captured every single pawn of opponent, you left one pawn or two pawns, let's assume, then that pawn will still have a move. So a stalemate will be avoided. So you can still go and checkmate the opponent. So the most important thing is if you have some extra material, you don't have to be very greedy and try to capture every material. After you have extra material which makes you happy, just try to go and checkmate the opponent. Don't try to capture every single piece. If you capture every single piece, you don't get the win. Yeah, it's the very basic logic. Checkmate only gets you the win. Yeah. So don't be too greedy. Again and again, this is a point I would also. These are all based on my experience as when I was a young player, as well as being a coach for players of multiple levels and having seen players for so many years. Okay. So that this is something I will emphasize once again. Okay. And another thing, basic opening principles. So, always castle, keep your king safe. Even players in 2000 level, 2100 FIDE rating level, they make some of these mistakes. You might be like, wait, what? Is that real? How can they make these principles? They do, because, it's even like even if you see like grandmaster games, there will be like 1 in 10 games where a grandmaster will try to break opening principle and they will get punished for it, for not following the principles. Yeah. So, but in amateur level, beginner level, maybe the opening principle will be broken in 8 out of 10 games or so. So the basic principles: get your king to safety, fight for center, whatever you always learn, stick to it. Chess is actually very simple if you follow very simple, concrete logic. It's actually not that tough. Yeah. So follow very basic opening principles. And if your opponent breaks the principle, this is something I see often as well, that people don't try to kind of like punish it. If your opponent breaks a principle, imagine your opponent keeps their king in center without castling for 15, 20 moves, for the first 15 moves. Then you should try to go and attack the king, try to checkmate the king in the center of the board. But what many of us try to do, we'll be like, okay, let my opponent do whatever he wants. I will do whatever I want. Yeah, I'll just move my knight, my queen, my bishop, my rook. But I won't go and attack the opponent. Yeah, that is not the right approach. You have to try to punish your opponent if they break a principle. It's a principle because there's some logic to it. If your opponent breaks the principle, that means they are not doing something right. When they are not doing something right, you have to go and punish it. It is like an example I often quote for this is, imagine a car is going in like 100 kilometers an hour. Let's going super fast. Let's say the speed limit is only like 60 kilometers. So the car is going super fast, which means that car that's going fast is breaking the principle. Then the police car or the cop car has to go faster than the 100 kilometers to catch the car that's going fast, right? So the cop car also technically breaks the road speed, but for the reason to catch the car that's going too fast. Same logic. If our opponent makes a mistake and let's say they break a principle, we have to go and punish them. We have to go and say, okay, you did not castle, I'm going to checkmate you. You did not fight for the center, I will take over the center. You did not develop your piece, I will not let you develop your piece. If you do it properly, well and good. You have followed the principle, we'll take the fight of the game into middle game or end game. Okay. So that's something. And so obviously these are the very basic principles. I think because these are things that often get missed in tournaments and might look very simple. Like my coach taught me or some of these things. But if you think of it, how many times do you apply it? Think of it yourself. Even if it's an online game, are you applying it? If you apply it, you will see a clear difference in result. So let's say if your chess.com or lead chess rating is 700, 800, 1000, that means definitely you're not most likely following some of these principles. It's like guaranteed. Yeah. If you follow these principles and apply them on time, like regularly and on so on, easily 100 to 150 points, you will start going up in rating. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And if you are going to be in this Singapore national tournament, these principles, try to stick to it as much as possible. Whatever that you can remember during the game. I know it will be a bit of tension because you'll be like, I have only 15 minutes in my clock. How do I manage my time? How do I follow principles and so on? So that is also another thing is, so because there's only 15 minutes and the increment, don't try to look at your friend's board or don't try to just go around during the game. Try to spend all your focus in the board. Yeah, it's a rapid tournament, rapid game, right? So as much as time you focus on the board, even when your opponent is thinking, that is another thing. When your opponent is thinking, what should we do, right? We should just simply stare at opponent? No. We should try to see, what can I play the next move? How can I, what strategies can I use the next move? So that is the smart way to use our opponent's time to calculate ideas as well. But what many of us do, maybe our friend, someone would be playing in the next board. We will be observing that game. Yeah. We can observe the game anytime later. Yeah. Or we can ask our friend after the game, how did you do? Better focus on your own game. Yeah. Don't try to focus or get distracted because if someone is standing opposite to you or anything. And at the end of the day, if these principles are followed, definitely you will have a good tournament in the Singapore Nationals. And even if, let's say, some games don't go your way, you lose, keep coming back to the next game with all your best ability, fight it out. That is very, very important, I would say. And also, as I mentioned, I have a few positions. So that is related to these principles. So we'll solve that. And then I'll open it for questions. Okay. So if you have any questions related to tournament play or general chess questions, I'll be happy to take a few questions. Okay. Let me share my screen again. Just 1 second. Okay. So if you get the answer right, please put it to me on chat. It is white to play to start, or if a lot of people, like if only one or two of you get the answer right, I can try to unmute you as well, just letting you know. And you can answer it out on voice. If not, so this is a very basic question, and this goes back to that checks captures threat, as I mentioned, and it is white to play. You can see the black king is really weak, and look at this king and try to think of something. So there are multiple checks here. Again, so I see some answers on chat. You're just writing the first check that you're seeing. There are 2, 3 different checks. So carefully observe the position. There are a few possible checks in this position for white. Take your time. Again, don't rush. Same as what I mentioned. Take your time. I'm giving you enough time. I will not be I'll give you another 30, 45 seconds to think through. Okay, I've got about a few answers already on chat. I'll give another 15, 20 seconds to the audience. Okay, so let me explain. Okay, I got a bunch of right answers now. The first answers I got was bishop c3 check, and some of you wanted to go queen f3 check. Yeah, these were all checks. Very good. No, nothing wrong about it. But are they good checks? Is something we need to. Even queen d4 is a check, right? Queen d4 is a check. Knight e4 is a check. Rook e6 is a check. I mean, but the question is, are these good checks or not? When we have so many checks on the board, right? So there are only a few checks that are good. Some are terrible. Like rook e6 is terrible, we know. We are just simply giving our rook for free because opponent will capture. Queen f5 is terrible. The queen will capture. Queen g6 is terrible. Bishop g5 is terrible. Yeah. So these are bad checks, right? So let me remove the arrow of the bad checks. So bishop c3, queen f3, knight e4. These are all checks that look interesting. But the problem with knight e4 is the king will run back towards safety. Yeah. We don't want something like that. And if we give queen d4 check also, the king will try to go towards safety with king f7 or king g6 and so on. So that doesn't work either. And bishop c3 is okay, but it's not the best move. I'll tell you why. Because when you play bishop c3, opponent can play knight takes c3, capture the bishop, and then you all will be like, hey, we get a free queen. So what's wrong with it, right? The point here is instead of bishop c3, if you carefully saw, knight h5 actually just checkmates in 2 by 4s because it's a check. And you, so in this position, the king's escape squares were this, that's all. Only 2 escape squares. So when you play knight h5 check, you take away this escape square, forcing the king to go to f7. And then the queen goes to h7 now, and it is a checkmate. So this is where what I was trying to mean is, would you want to capture a queen or would you want to checkmate the opponent? Choose the option to checkmate the opponent. Don't try to win a queen. Yeah. When you have a forced checkmate, why not checkmate the opponent? Yeah. So very good. Like Shilpa, Prajwal, some of you got the answers right. Very good. And let me go to the next position. Okay, so this was about check. Yeah. So when you have so many checks, and if your opponent king is near the center, you should try to go and try to checkmate the opponent. Okay. Yeah. Let's look at the next game. Okay, so this is black to play. Again, if you observe and apply checks, captures, threats carefully, you might be able to find the answer. It is black to play in this position. I'll give about a minute or so. So take your time. Again, no rush. Don't try to see the answer very quickly. Take your time. I've got a few answers so far, and I'll give another 10 to 15 seconds and then I'll show you what the answer is. Yeah. Okay. So very good. I've got some correct answers. So first, let me discuss the answers that were all suggested in the class. So one of you was suggesting rook d8. Fairly okay move. You want to bring the rook to an open file. But if you applied the check captures threats carefully, you would have found the move because there is no check that we can give on the king, right? The king is very safe. So no checks applicable. But what about captures? Yeah. So there are 2 captures or 3 captures possible, either bishop c4 or knight c4 or knight b5. Yeah, we have 3 captures. But if we capture bishop c4 or knight c4, white will just simply capture back and we lose a piece. Yeah, so we can't do anything about it. But if you look at here, when we capture knight b5, right? White can capture our knight, but what does it happen? The bishop is hanging. So if there is no good check, yeah, and by the way, not all checks are good. Okay. So if you have a check, that doesn't mean immediately you should go and play that check. You need to first observe, is it a good or a bad check? Is it something I can play? If not, move to captures. Yeah. And as you can see, if you play this tactic, you win a pawn. Yeah, a free pawn. White gets no compensation for the pawn. So very good, Matthew, and then Prajwal, Shilpa, you all got the answers right. Very good. Yes, knight takes b5 is the right answer because after c takes b5, bishop takes b3. So, your opponents will give you a lot of chances like this in your games. So if you just spend a few extra seconds or maybe a 1 minute extra, you can spot this. And if you become one pawn up, it is very easy to win this. After this, your idea is to bring the rook to d8, try to push the pawn forward, make a queen, and win the game. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Yeah, that's the basic idea. Okay, let me go to the next position. Okay, so this is slightly harder than the previous two positions. So let's see who gets it right. Again, it is white to play. And again, please use the checks, captures, threats. That principle, you will be able to find the answer if you use it right way. White to play and find the right place. I don't see any answers. I guess as I was guessing, this is a slightly harder puzzle for today's class. Uh, okay, I'm seeing some answers start to come in. Okay, let me explain this. So far, what I see on chat is some of you were like, why don't we do this? And it's a capture, right? And a check combined, check and capture. So it would, but what if our opponent simply captures, right? What do we do next? Is a big question. We don't have anything that we could really do much. We just gave up our bishop for free. As I mentioned, checks, captures, and all, we have to check if it's good or bad. Yeah, just because it's a check or just because it's a capture doesn't make it amazing. But we should check for it every single. That is the key. So in this position, we saw checks in the first position, capture. So this puzzle was mainly about threats. Yeah. So here we have to create a threat. But before that, we have to be aware that our opponent, if we look from black side, they have created two threats. Yeah. One of the major threats is possibly capturing the knight or capturing the pawn. So they have two big threats in the position to start off. So what are we going to do to stop the threat? So one of the things is if our opponent creates a threat on any of our pieces or anything, generally the best way to react to it is to counter attack. Instead of trying to defend, if there is a way, we should counter attack. So black is attacking the knight, black is attacking the pawn. So what does white do? White is not going to go defend the knight or go defend the pawn. White is going to attack the queen with h4. And why is this a very good move? Okay, where is this queen going to go? The queen is under pressure, right? Queen cannot go here, cannot go here because the bishop will capture the queen. And queen cannot come anywhere in this diagonal except h6. This is the one only square the queen can go, right? And if the queen does go to h6, what happens is, now again we keep the pressure, we keep the attack, knight g4. So the knight attacks the queen. The queen has to move. And now we have a very nice little tactic that knight takes f6, which is a check. And also now we are going to be capturing the queen as black captures the knight. Yeah. So after h4, if let's say black plays bishop takes d5, capturing the pawn and attacking our queen, we have a checkmate in 3. I hope some of you might have already spotted. Can anyone help me find a checkmate in 3 that white could do here? Like in one of the variations, it's not a forced line, but most likely it will be a checkmate in 3 if black plays certain moves. So our queen is attacked, black queen is also attacked. So what are we going to do? Yes, Matthew, you got it right. So we can start with h takes g5. At the point being, if bishop f3, we simply play bishop h7 check and knight g6 checkmate. Yeah. So the opponent does not take the queen, it's not a checkmate, but it's like we have an extra queen, right? So if normally they will try to capture, And here we capture this because once again, material is not important if there is an option to checkmate. So we can capture the bishop if we want, but when we have a checkmate, we just go for the checkmate. Remember that. And for h4, if black plays f takes e5 and the queen is attacked, we play bishop h7 check, king h7, h takes g5, and it's a check again. Yeah. And the king has to move and we move the queen. And now white has an extra queen and white wins the position by force. Okay. So these were some positions I had. I had more positions, but I think as we have kind of lack of time, I think the positions will end it here. So if anyone has any question in general, put it to me on chat right now. I just want to make a few announcements in the meantime as you type your questions on chat. Yeah. So let me share my screen once again, but just put your questions if you have on chat. Yeah. Or if you want to have a voice question, we can unmute you as well, in case if you want to ask something over audio. Okay, so a few things that I just want to mention in addition is, so we have a lot of programs coming up for summer in Chess Gaja, like summer classes, and some programs we've already announced. Some of them are going to be announced very soon. And for all levels, like, from these are in addition to the one-to-one classes that we have in different coaching levels in the academy. So that is one. And so that's one part of it. And another thing is, yeah, in case if you're already an academy student right now at Chess Gaja, please do consider giving us a Google review. We have a lot of reviews from our students already, and we have a perfect 5.0. So it would be great if we could get more Google reviews from our students who are attending the session today. And if you want to look at the group classes, please look at our website link. On the website, we have those details, everything mentioned over here. And yeah, all the programs. So by country, we have sorted it out. And so whichever country you are, you can find it suitable to your timing specifically. And also we have some master classes which are taken by me personally, but these are more geared towards US friendly timings. But some of you might have some time sessions that might match. And also summer camp details are here. So even if you think it's too basic for you, please refer your friends or family members who might be interested in learning. So we have summer camps coming up in April, May, June, July, throughout the summer. So these are just some basic things that I just want to bring to everyone's attention. And yeah, so questions. So I'll take the questions. So let me stop sharing. Okay, so I have one question asking, what opening would you recommend for 1d4? So opening, there are a lot of good opening replies for e4 as well as d4. So best would be to check with your coach or whoever you're training with. In general, some really good openings, solid openings are Nimzo Indian, King's Indian, Queen's Gambit declined, Queen's Gambit accepted, Slav, semi-Slav. So these are the openings that I would absolutely recommend. If you in players or in Prajwal in your level, mainly you need to choose openings that are very simple to remember and to apply it in your tournament games. That is very important. So you don't need to know 20, 30 moves of theoretical knowledge. You should try to know at least 6 to 7 moves of opening in or any opening you learn. So if you are playing d4, you also have to choose based on your style. If you are a very aggressive player, let us say, then you should try to choose an opening that gives you that aggressive chances. If you are a positional player, let's say, Queen's Gambit accepted could be a very good choice. But if you're a very aggressive player, King's Indian defense could be a very good choice. If you want to play something very solid, kind of wait and watch, something like semi-Slav, Slav, Queen's Gambit declined, these are very good. Extremely solid opening is Nimzo Indian. Yeah, these are the major openings that are really, really good against 1d4. So I would suggest talk to your coach and choose from one of this, which would personally suit you. So I used to play for 1d4 with black. I used to play Nimzo Indian. I used to play Queen's Gambit accepted also. Dutch defense is an option, but I would not recommend it. Better to play something much more mainline than like what I just suggested. I also have played Stonewall Dutch with black. I would not really recommend it because it is not a very solid opening. I mean, solid as in it has some problems, right? So better is to learn the best opening theory possible than to play something like Dutch defense, because if you play like a slightly dubious opening, at some point as you get better at chess, you would still have to change your opening line. So better is to learn a very main line start at the start itself. Yeah. So you'll get a lot of experience in that line. Okay. Anyone else with any questions? I'll keep it open for another minute or two. If there's no questions, we'll be ending this meeting. Just wanted to, I hope. Uh, yeah, so the message for a 6-year-old participating in the tournament for the first time. As I mentioned, I still remember my first tournament. When I was 7 years old, I won 2 games and I lost three. And I got a consolation prize in that tournament. So main thing is try to ensure the player doesn't take losses very like personally. Ensure they don't really mind if they lose the game. As a parent, I believe it's a question by a parent. So ensure that your kid stays positive even if they lose a game. That's very important. And ask them to enjoy that atmosphere, because a chess tournament atmosphere itself is very unique in my opinion. You have players playing inside the tournament hall, playing outside the tournament hall, friendly games. Yeah. So main thing for you have to ensure is that, as I mentioned, ask your kid to see all the checks if possible. Ask him to spend time on the board. Don't rush to make the moves. That's what I mentioned right at the start. Because most young kids, they don't have the patience. They try to play very quickly, finish the game, and then go outside and play with their friends. Ask him to, as much as possible, spend all the allocated time that you have in the tournament. So that is one, and ask him to enjoy the experience as it's just the first tournament, right? So, like, expecting to win the whole tournament right at the first tournament might be a bit too much. So mainly as an expectation, it should be that the kid enjoys the atmosphere and likes the game, so that, the interest for the game will continue to, grow from that. That is very key, I would say. That would be the message I would say if anyone is playing their first tournament in addition to this. Yeah. And also maybe ask the player to practice a few checkmate in ones, because in 6-year-old level and all, there'll be a lot of checkmate in ones missed. So try to solve some very basic checkmates as a practice before the game. That is, I think, very important. Okay, and another question I have, is the black mare, d-mare gambit a good opening? No, generally, most gambits are bad. There are exceptions, but most gambits are bad. Okay. So whenever, again, my principle is, as most of you are just starting in your chess career, you played maybe chess for 1 year, or some of you even just for a few days or a few months. Um, try to don't try to follow opening theory that is shared a lot in YouTube. Like a lot of YouTube videos will be like, play this particular gambit and win your opponent in 5 moves or 10 moves, So most of those videos are, gambit related chess content that you can see outside in YouTube or general like websites. They are not good, because the point is gambits are fundamentally unsound, most of the gambits. So when you learn, instead of putting a lot of effort to learn something that is not right, like an unsound gambit, if you put your effort to learn something that is like, the proper theory, right? You'll get a lot more result in the long run. Because let's say you play a gambit, you win like for 2 tournaments, your opponent don't really know the tactics or traps inside that gambit. You will score tournament victories in 2 tournaments. But once they understand the traps in that gambit, right? Next time you cannot play the same line. What will you do then? Right? But if you play the proper mainline theory, proper opening, even if they come prepared for your traps or for your opening, you can still go and confidently play it. That is the advantage of playing a proper variation in comparison to playing gambits. So some gambits are okay. Like for example, Queen's Gambit accepted, Queen's Gambit declined. Those are all good. but majority of the gambits are dubious. Like I would say 85% of the gambits are dubious. So you need to do specific analysis to find a very simple test to find if a gambit is good or bad. I would say look at the number of strong players that play that gambit. Strong players means grandmaster level players. If a lot of players play that gambit, then it's a good opening. If they don't, then it's not. Okay. If will I recommend King's Gambit? That is one of the questions. No. If we are talking about e4, e5, f4, if that's the King's Gambit, I believe you're also talking about as white. That is also not technically correct in the sense it is not a good opening. It used to be very popular about, let's say, 100 years ago when chess was still pre-computer and pre all the analysis era. But these days, King's Gambit and all is very well analyzed. Instead of playing King's Gambit, you can either choose a Rilopus or a Four Knights or a Scotch or like something like that. Yeah, something like that would be better, or a Guccio Piano, Italian, some of this instead of King's Gambit. Pick and like pick one main line, learn it really in depth instead of trying to learn a lot of openings, in at least in this level. Okay. Sounds good. I think I've answered most of the questions. Good luck to all the participants who are playing in the Singapore Nationals and to general participants who joined also. Good luck, even if you're participating in any other tournaments or if you're planning to participate in any other tournaments. And if you have any general questions related to classes or upcoming programs, you can reach out to us in the same WhatsApp number where we gave you the link access. Sounds good. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope the session was helpful. If anyone wants to add, want to share something, if you found it useful or not, we can unmute any of you. If anyone wants to add some of your thoughts from the participants. I don't want it to be like I was talking the whole 40 minutes or 15 minutes. Does anyone want to add anything from the participants' perspective? Parents, kids, anyone it could be. If so, please put it on chat. We can unmute you. Okay, sounds good. I guess no one is interested. No one is like maybe not wanting to share their thoughts. It's okay. So good luck once again. And after the tournament, if whenever you play a tournament, please analyze those games. That's the final thing I want to end with. Whenever you win, also analyze the game. Not just the games you lose. Please put effort to analyze games that you won. Because as I said, in a single game, you'll make 9 to 10 mistakes, even in a game that you won. Like you will make 5, your opponent will make 5. So if you can identify that 5, even in a game that you won, you can fix it, ensure you can win more games. Okay, thanks everyone for joining today's session. Hopefully I'll see you all in some other class in the future. Bye-bye. Bye everyone.